Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we have a great listening session ready for you. Before we dive into the story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us create more content for you. Ready? Let's get started. An intellectual conversation between two former classmates. Adrian. I sometimes wonder whether our generation is genuinely exhausted, or merely addicted to the performance of exhaustion. Sophia. That's an interesting distinction. Personally, I think it's both. People are undeniably overwhelmed, but at the same time, burnout has almost become a cultural identity. Adrian. Exactly. There's this unspoken competition over who sleeps less, works harder, or suffers more. It's as if exhaustion has become a badge of honor. Sophia. Because productivity has replaced morality in modern society. People no longer ask whether you're kind or thoughtful. They ask whether you're successful, efficient, and constantly busy. Adrian. That's disturbingly accurate. Sometimes I feel as though we've reduced human worth to measurable output. Sophia. We absolutely have. And technology accelerated the process. We're available every hour of the day, constantly responding to messages, emails, notifications. There's barely any psychological silence left. Adrian. Psychological silence. I like that phrase. Sophia. You know what I mean though. Even when we're physically alone, our minds are overcrowded. There's always another voice demanding attention. Adrian. I've noticed that recently. A few months ago, I went hiking alone for 3 days without internet access. At first I felt anxious, almost restless. Then something strange happened. My thoughts gradually slowed down. Sophia. Like your mind was detoxing. Adrian. Exactly. I realized how unnatural our normal pace of life has become. We consume more information in a single day than previous generations probably consumed in weeks. Sophia. And yet, despite all that information, people don't necessarily become wiser. Adrian. That's because information and wisdom are completely different things. Information is accumulation. Wisdom is discernment. Sophia. That might be the most philosophical sentence I've heard this month. Adrian. Occupational hazard. Spending too many years in academia tends to make people sound unintentionally dramatic. Sophia. Speaking of academia, are you still teaching at the university? Adrian. I am, although I've become increasingly conflicted about it. Sophia. Why? I thought teaching was your dream. Adrian. It was. And in many ways, it still is. I love the classroom itself, the discussions, the moments when students suddenly understand something profound. But the institution surrounding education has changed dramatically. Sophia. In what sense? Adrian. Universities increasingly function like corporations. Everything revolves around rankings, funding, and marketability. Students are treated like customers. And professors are expected to produce endless research regardless of whether it contributes anything meaningful. Sophia. So education becomes transactional rather than intellectual. Adrian. Precisely. Curiosity is being replaced by efficiency. Students often ask, will this be on the exam? Rather than, why does this matter? Sophia. That's tragic, but not surprising. Society conditions people to prioritize outcomes over understanding. Adrian. And honestly, I can't entirely blame them. Many students are terrified about their futures. Tuition is expensive, housing is unstable, and the job market is unpredictable. Of course they focus on survival. Sophia. Fear changes the way people think. When survival becomes the priority, intellectual exploration starts to feel like a luxury. Adrian. Exactly. And that concerns me deeply. Because civilizations decline when they stop valuing reflection. Sophia. I agree. Reflection requires patience, and patience has become almost obsolete. Everyone expects immediate answers, immediate success, immediate gratification. Adrian. We've become psychologically incompatible with slowness. Sophia. Beautifully phrased. Adrian. Thank you. Although I wish it weren't true. Sophia. Sometimes I think modern life resembles an endless hallway filled with mirrors. Everyone is constantly observing themselves, curating themselves, branding themselves. Adrian. Social media intensified that phenomenon enormously. Identity became performative. Sophia. Exactly. People no longer simply experience moments. They document them, edit them, and transform them into content. Adrian. Which creates a dangerous separation between living and observing oneself living. Sophia. Yes. That's precisely it. We've become spectators of our own existence. Adrian. Do you remember when people used to disappear for hours, without explanation? Sophia. Of course. Now if someone doesn't reply within 20 minutes, others assume something is wrong. Adrian. Constant accessibility has fundamentally altered human relationships. Sophia. And not necessarily for the better. We communicate more frequently, but often less meaningfully. Adrian. Quantity replacing depth again. It's a recurring theme in modern society. Sophia. Everything becomes optimized for speed and visibility. Even emotions are compressed into short captions and emojis. Adrian. Which might explain why so many people struggle to articulate their inner lives. Sophia. That's true. Emotional vocabulary requires introspection, and introspection requires silence. Adrian. Silence again. Interesting how our conversation keeps returning to that concept. Sophia. Maybe because silence has become rare enough to feel almost sacred. They pause briefly while the rain taps softly against the cafe windows. Adrian. Do you ever think humanity is becoming emotionally fragmented? Sophia. Constantly. People are more connected technologically yet increasingly isolated psychologically. It's a paradox. Adrian. I read a study recently suggesting that loneliness levels are higher now than they were decades ago, despite unprecedented digital connectivity. Sophia. That doesn't surprise me at all. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, and modern culture often rewards performance more than honesty. Adrian. Vulnerability has become risky, especially online. Sophia. Exactly. The internet remembers everything. People become afraid of imperfection because every mistake can be permanently archived and publicly judged. Adrian. Which creates enormous psychological pressure, particularly for younger generations. Imagine growing up knowing your entire adolescence might remain visible forever. Sophia. Honestly, I'm grateful we experienced childhood before social media dominated everything. We were allowed to be awkward privately. Adrian. That's an excellent point. Today embarrassment has become global and permanent. Sophia. And yet despite all this criticism, I don't think technology itself is evil. Adrian. Neither do I. Technology amplifies human tendencies. It doesn't create them from nothing. Sophia. Exactly. Social media didn't invent vanity, loneliness, or tribalism. It simply industrialized them. Adrian. Industrialized loneliness. There's another phrase that sounds depressing enough to belong in a philosophy book. Sophia. Maybe we should co-write one. Adrian. It would either become a bestseller, or emotionally devastate everyone who reads? It's Sophia. Possibly both. They laugh. Quietly, Sophia. You know what fascinates me most? Adrian. What? Sophia. Despite all the chaos in the world, people still continue searching for meaning. Adrian. That may be the most fundamentally human instinct of all. Sophia. Exactly. Even after disappointment, heartbreak, political instability, economic anxiety, people still fall in love, create art, raise children, and imagine better futures. Adrian. There's something profoundly courageous about that. Sophia. I think hope is one of the most underestimated forms of resilience. Adrian. Absolutely. Cynicism often disguises itself as intelligence nowadays, but genuine hope actually requires far greater bravery. Sophia. Because hope involves the possibility of disappointment. Cynicism protects people from vulnerability. Adrian. Yet it also isolates them emotionally. Sophia. Yes. Eventually cynicism becomes a prison disguised as sophistication. Adrian. That line deserves to be written down somewhere. Sophia. Feel free to quote me in your future philosophy bestseller. Adrian. Deal. I'll dedicate an entire chapter to existential exhaustion and overpriced coffee. Sophia. Which, coincidentally, describes this carpet perfectly. Adrian. Speaking of coffee, should we order another round? Sophia. Definitely. Conversations like this shouldn't end too quickly. Adrian. Agreed. It's rare to find someone willing to explore ideas slowly anymore. Sophia. Maybe that's why these conversations matter so much. They remind us that depth still exists beneath all the noise. Adrian. And perhaps that's enough reason to remain optimistic. Sophia. Perhaps it is.